I'm about to upgrade to macOS Monterey, but before I do that, I want to make a backup of my Big Sur startup disk so that if after upgrading I realize one of my productivity applications isn't working correctly, I can easily downgrade back to macOS Big Sur. To make that backup, I'll open up CCC, I'll choose my current startup disk as a source, my locally attached volume as the destination, and start the task. Default settings are fine here. Those settings are designed to make a complete backup of all of my applications, system settings, and user data, and I can use that backup with Migration Assistant to downgrade back to Big Sur. Okay, now that backup is complete, the next step is to go ahead and apply the macOS Monterey upgrade, and I will do that now. Alright, I upgraded to macOS Monterey. In a typical scenario, you'd kick it around for a little bit and then make a decision whether or not you want to stick with it, or if you want to downgrade back to an earlier OS. If you want to downgrade, CCC's macOS Downgrade Assistant window can help you get that process started correctly. Open CCC and choose macOS Downgrade Assistant from the Utilities menu. The Downgrade Assistant has two specific functions. First, you can drag your CCC backup volume onto the box at the top of the window to confirm that it's compatible with Migration Assistant. Naturally, we wouldn't want to boot from the installer media and erase the internal disk just to find out that Migration Assistant won't accept your backup. So step 1, drag your backup volume onto that box at the top of the window. In this case, we can see that my backup volume will be accepted by Migration Assistant on a Mac running Big Sur or later. If I had already run a backup after upgrading to Monterey, this would indicate that I can only migrate that data to a system running Monterey or later. You can't migrate data from a newer OS to an older OS, so it's very important that you make your downgrade decision before resuming your backup tasks on the newer OS. Okay, so I want to downgrade to Big Sur, but my Mac is currently running Monterey. It would be nice if I could just open the Big Sur installer and tell it to downgrade my OS, but Apple doesn't allow it to work like that. To get around that, we need to create a macOS installer device using the macOS installer application and a USB or Thunderbolt disk. If you don't already have the macOS installer, select the OS that you want to install from this pop-up menu and download it from the App Store. When the download's complete, you'll find it in your Applications folder. You can drag that installer file onto this box, or you can click here to select it from your Applications folder. Next, attach a USB or Thunderbolt disk to your Mac. We need a disk that has at least 15 gigabytes of free space. A CCC backup volume will typically work, but you may need to find an empty disk. A USB flash drive can work, but those can be really slow, so I recommend using a typical external hard drive for this particular task. Drag that volume onto this box at the right, and CCC indicates that it will borrow 15 gigabytes of space from that volume. Click the Create Installer Volume button, and then CCC will add a partition to this disk and create the installer device. Alright, now we have install media. The next step is to restart this system. This is an Apple Silicon Mac, so I'm going to restart and then hold down the power button on startup. For an Intel Mac, you'd restart and hold down the Option key, and that will load the Startup Manager, where we get to choose our next startup disk. I rebooted holding down the power button, and now I've got the startup options here. I'm going to select Install macOS Big Sur. Before I proceed with the installation of macOS Big Sur, though, the first thing that I need to do is erase the internal hard drive. So we're going to quit out of the installer and then open up Disk Utility. In Disk Utility, I'm going to go choose Show All Devices from the View menu. And then I'm going to select the topmost object representing my internal hard drive in the sidebar. Click Erase in the toolbar, and then erase that internal disk as APFS. Now on an Apple Silicon Mac, I'm going to get a couple additional prompts about really erasing the whole Mac. And that's what we really want to do in this case. We want to erase every trace of macOS Monterey from this system so that we can downgrade it to Big Sur. So now that the Macintosh HD and the whole Mac has been erased, it's going to boot into the recovery assistant and ask us to activate the Mac. Again, this is only applicable to Apple Silicon Macs. This is not something you would see on an Intel Mac. So next we're going to select a Wi-Fi network and then proceed with the activation. Alright, so I've joined the network and now it's going to automatically connect to Apple servers and activate the Mac. Okay, activation is complete. Now I'm going to exit to recovery. And you can see here that we're actually booted from the macOS Monterey Recovery Assistant. It's prompting me to reinstall macOS Monterey. We don't want to do that. We want to shut down the system, restart it again, and hold down the power button. And then we're going to choose again that Big Sur installer device. Again, we'll choose the Install Big Sur startup device, and then it will open the macOS installer, and then we'll proceed to install macOS Big Sur. Select Macintosh HD. And when the installation is complete, Setup Assistant will come up and then we'll proceed with migrating data from the backup. macOS installation finally completed, so now I've got a clean install of Big Sur back on my internal drive. The next thing I'm going to do is continue here with Setup Assistant, and at the point at which I get prompted to use Migration Assistant, this is where we're going to go ahead and continue to migrate data from the CCC backup volume. So we'll select our Big Sur backup here, click Continue, and select whatever you want to migrate. In my case, I just want to migrate everything. Set a password for the primary admin user. Continue. And then Migration Assistant will migrate all of the data from the backup back to the internal disk. When it's done, it'll restart. And when it restarts, you will be all set. You'll be able to log in and use your Mac as if you'd never upgraded to Monterey in the first place.